Ladies and gentlemen, live from Medford, Mass, Chevalier Theater, The Great Debate.
Good evening, and thank you for attending or tuning in to Medford's Great Debate. My name is Ken Kraus, and I'm very pleased to welcome everyone on behalf of the Friends of Chevalier Auditorium and Gene Mack Gym. The Friends of Chevalier for 22 years have been providing community and financial support for this beautiful theater, and also the Gene Mack Gym downstairs, which houses the wonderful Medford Boys and Girls Club. I particularly like to thank the community in two ways. First of all, for everyone who was involved 35 years ago, for insisting that this building remain a Medford jewel and part of its original purpose, and not converted into condominiums like the rest of the Medford High School was next door. And secondly, I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved over the last 35 years, working diligently, volunteering their time, their money, their talents to bring this theater back to the condition that it's in now that we enjoy tonight. Because we have such a great venue, we've been able to enjoy a wide variety of performances, drama, music, dance, the high school level, community level, professional level. We've also been able to enjoy various political and civic events. For example, did you know that when he was the Vice President of the United States, Richard Nixon delivered a campaign speech on this stage? He did. September 28th, 1954. Another sitting Vice President, Alban Barkley, attended a political event here, as did John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. More recently, in 2000, the City of Medford held its inauguration ceremonies for all its elected officials here. And on a more somber occasion, the city opened Chevalier Auditorium on the night of September 11th, 2001, for the community to gather and deal with the tragic events of that morning. So because we have Chevalier Auditorium, we've been able to enjoy all these many events, and we're very grateful for that. Tonight, we're looking toward Medford's future, and we're very grateful and sincerely thank the candidates for Medford Mayor, Stephanie Muccini Burk and Robert Penta, for stepping forward and putting their hat in the ring for this enormously challenging position. We also like to thank the Medford Chamber of Commerce for putting on this debate, and particularly for selecting Chevalier Auditorium as the venue. So to get things started, I'd like to welcome up Mr. John Veneziano. John is the president of RE/MAX Andrew Realty Services here in Medford Square. He's a member of the Chevalier Auditorium Commission. He is the chair of the Medford Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee and co-chair of Medford's Great Debate tonight. Please welcome Mr. John Veneziano.
Wow! We're looking at Medford Pride tonight. Great turnout. Thank you very much. Let's hear it for yourselves. A few things before we get started. Please, everyone, vibrate your phones. Let's turn and vibrate those phones right now so the candidates are not interfered with on the ringing. So I appreciate you doing that. There are many people to thank tonight for putting this together. Ken named a few. So please, in the back of your program, those people are there and they deserve recognition for the lot of work that it took to put this together. But again, some very special thanks to the Medford Chamber of Commerce. We talked about doing this debate. It was a lot of work to decide whether we should go forward or not, especially with school committee group and the city council. But it came out great, and we got the opportunity of doing the both, working with both candidates tonight, and only the two candidates to give them the full focus of their campaign. Also, my associates in the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. We're a committee that works with the businesses, and it was very important for us to be able to put a great performance together. John Costas from Medford Electronics has done a great job in getting all this production done. I have to please thank you for John. We would not have this live tonight. This is going live to 50,000 plus people in the world, I guess. If you turn your TV on, if you YouTube it, if you go to the Medford Chamber of Commerce and you link in, anybody can see it. But I'd like to thank the Somerville Community Access TV for being here tonight to allow that to happen. Also, we have a couple of teachers from the McGlynn School, Mike Scrolla and Brian Vallard. They're actually streaming this live on the internet, and they took the time to come out and do that for us as well. My board members on the Chevalier Auditorium Commission, again, thank you for allowing us to use the theater. There was a lot to coordinate with dates for shows. We have a lot of shows coming up. The Bee Gees are coming up soon, so you may want to take a look at that. And of course, the Friends of Chevalier Auditorium and the GMAC Gym. So a great, big applause for them, please. Thank you. Let's give credit where credit is due. Anybody could have the opportunity of running for mayor. Two people stepped up, Stephanie Muccini Burk and Bob Penta. Let's give them a hand for doing that. So let's introduce the key members of the Medford's Great Debate. And we're going to start with our timekeepers. George Thurrott. George is a graduate of Medford High School of 1970 and the owner of Modern Hardware in Haynes Square. He's a charter member of the Salem Street Community Association and a board member of the Medford Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. George Thurrott. Steve Pompeo. Steve is the owner of Pompeo & Sons Insurance along with his brother John. He's volunteered and served in many capacities within the city, including board member of the Medford Chamber of Commerce and the member of the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. He's a member of the City of Medford Parks Commission, as well as the City of the Medford's Board of Assessors. Steve Pompeo. Okay, to our 5 panelists, all Medford residents, starting with our chairperson, Dan Kennedy. Dan is Associate Professor of Journalism at Northeastern University and author of The Wired City, Reimagining Journalism and Civic Life in the Post-Newspaper Age. He's a regular panelist on Beat the Press, a weekly program about media issues on WGBH TV Channel 2. Dan Kennedy. Next up, John Anderson. John is a retired IT consultant and senior manager who has had active roles in a number of nonprofit organizations, including Treasurer of the Royal House and Slave Quarters, President of the Medford Historical Society and Museum, and board member of the Friends of Chevalier Auditorium and the GMAC Gym. John Anderson. Rita Cornelio. Rita is a property owner and has called Medford home since 1967. For more than 33 years, she has operated her business, Mystic Valley Travel, in historic Medford Square. Rita founded Taste of Italy to celebrate Italian Heritage Month. She is also the past president of the Medford Kiwanis Club. Ladies and gentlemen, Rita Cornelio. Allie Fisk-Shavansky. Allie has worked in the city for 8 years, serving on the staff and board of numerous arts and cultural organizations. She is the program director of Cachet in Medford, serves on the board of the Medford Arts Council, and currently works at the New England Foundation for the Arts in Boston. Ladies and gentlemen, Allie Fisk-Shavansky. Penny Outlaw. Penny has been a Medford resident for 11 years. She is past treasurer of the Medford Historical Society in the museum and is currently co-president of the Royal House and Slave Quarters, where she's also a tour guide. Her professional background is human resources. Ladies and gentlemen, Penny Outlaw. Okay, so the referee of tonight, our moderator, the person who will give you all the rules of how this is going to be, Kerry Kavanaugh. Kerry is an investigative reporter at Fox 25 News. The opportunity at Fox 25 brought Kerry back home to Medford, where she was born and raised. As an investigative reporter, Kerry covers stories across the area. She is thrilled to be part of the great debate in her hometown of Medford. Ladies and gentlemen, Kerry Kavanaugh.
Ready to dance up here. How's everybody doing tonight? On behalf of myself, Fox 25 News, and my wonderful group of panelists here, we want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for inviting all of us to be a part of Medford's great debate. And we want to thank all of you for packing this house tonight. It's so exciting to see this crowd. I know John mentioned it, but here's your reminder. You know one of you still has that ringer on. So reach into your pockets, your pocketbooks, pull out your cell phones, and please put them on silent or vibrate. Do not, however, turn them off. We would love for you to live tweet this debate if you are Twitter users using the hashtag #MedfordDebate. So we all want you to hear from your candidates. You're excited about the future of our great city, so we want you to be able to hear them. So to that, we're going to ask you to keep the cheering and hopefully no jeering down tonight until the very end. Except for right now, big round of applause for your candidates tonight, Stephanie Burk and Bob Penta. Okay, we want to lay out the groundwork. Can you guys hear me? We good? Okay. We want to lay down the ground rules for our debate tonight. We received more than 200 questions from residents of the city of Medford, and we boiled them down as best we could, choosing a series of them based on what the majority identified as key issues for our city. The candidates will each answer both questions, and neither candidate has seen any of the questions. They will be hearing them for the first time tonight. Each will have 2 minutes to answer, and each will have 1 minute for a rebuttal. We've also incorporated into this debate this evening a lightning round about halfway through, and those will be shorter answers, hopefully under 30 seconds, just to change it up a bit. The speaking order. Backstage, we predetermined the order in which the candidates will speak through a fair process which both candidates were involved in. And each will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and to that we begin with Mr. Bob Penta.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Robert Penta, and I respectfully request your vote to be Medford's new mayor on November 3rd. My desire to run for mayor was born from so many citizens asking for change, a change that encourages responsible growth, more community input, greater transparency, stronger fiscal responsibility, all driven by common sense. A change that will present new beginnings, because the ultimate price of doing the same old thing is far more expensive than the price of change. And so, after listening to so many of our citizens over the past months, I have put together a Penta plan that will begin to address your concerns. First, we will deal with the dysfunctional out-of-state Tennessee Republic parking kiosk fiasco. We will also create an Office of Business and Cultural Affairs. We will hire a professional grant writer, proficient in mixed-use, business, commercial development opportunities for our squares. We will propose a new police department building and a financial plan within the next 3 years. We will embrace a new educational program for higher standards. We will impose a 5% individual school mandate for maintenance requirement, and we will transition our Medford Public Library into an enticing and inviting place. We will initiate an independent auditing review with fresh eyes to examine our city and school department finances. And we will refine our water and sewer infrastructure plan and address the city's $7.5 million surplus in that account. I, Bob Penta, candidate for mayor, have a plan. one that will move our Medford forward with responsible growth and community interest, and help us realize our full potential. Will it happen overnight? Absolutely not. But what will happen overnight is that our citizens will know that a transparent plan is in place and that all are welcome to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes for Ms. Muccini-Burk.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Muccini-Burk, and I'm running to be your next mayor. Thank you to those that are involved in this evening, and all of you for coming out tonight as well and streaming live at home. As you might sense, there's an urgency about this election cycle that we have not seen in some time. Medford certainly is at a crossroads, and we will have a clear choice in the direction you would like to see your city go. Like you, I chose to reside and raise my family here. Having graduated from Medford High, I earned a bachelor's degree from Suffolk and a master's in taxation from Bentley University. My 3 children have all attended public schools, and I am invested in this community and will be its champion. I believe that 15 years as your city councilor, 4 years as director of budget and personnel, and over 25 years as a licensed, certified public accountant in the private sector makes me the most qualified candidate to be your next mayor. I originally ran for council because I thought my perspective as a working mom and a small business owner in the city would be valuable. I promised I would be a different type of voice, a calm, articulate, and respectful voice. I kept my promise, and when elected mayor, I promised once again to bring that voice and my knowledge, work ethic, honesty, love of this city to the office of mayor. I plan to bring some of the best practices that I have seen in other communities to Medford, such as the quarterly ward meetings in Somerville, the Resi Staff program, or the planning group in Salem called the Salem Partnership. It is the partnerships throughout the community and region that will kickstart Medford's progress, which is what we so desperately need. I have a proven record of accomplishment in the city, such as a small restaurant initiative for beer and wine, advocating and attaining disability access to the MHS fields, and ushering through the city's capital plan with the corresponding increase in our bond rating. But much needs to be done. The first order of business is to cooperatively prepare a 5-year master plan that will place Medford Square at the forefront of our revitalization efforts. It should be a hub of economic activity in our city. This, combined with active recruitment by the city and chamber, will lead to greater diversity of businesses and increased tax base.
Thank you,
Medford
Ms.
is ready
Muccini-Burk.
for its moment. As a community,
We're going
we
over
take
now.
pride.
We're over our 2
Oh,
minutes here.
sorry.
That's okay,
Sorry.
no problem. We do want to get to our questions from
Thank
our
you.
residents. Thank you very
Thank
much. And with that, our first question comes from Dan.
And the question will be answered first by Ms. Muccini-Burk. What are your top 3 priorities that you will address as mayor?
Well, the first priority is to bring the outdated master plan from 2005 back to life with a clear group of people that want to work in the best interest of Medford to make it the best place it can be. A lot has to happen at Medford Square, including this great Chevalier Theater, which certainly is a way to promote the economic vitality of our square. But the city really has to focus on bringing in a project manager team as well as a developer to bring the end of Medford Square near City Hall to its highest potential value and use, including affordable housing and a place for the arts, which I promised so many years ago to the people that were involved in that program back then. So that certainly is my top priority. Beyond that, there's other subtleties that I think have to be addressed, such as the customer service aspect of City Hall. It's very important that when you come in to do your business, you're treated with respect. You are the people that are paying all the salaries and paying the bills, and you deserve to have that treatment when you walk in. We also need to surround ourselves with the best capable, diverse group of people that we can to run the city's finances and all of the other operations of our community. So that is definitely another priority. Also, we need to take back the river. Medford Square right now, if you look at the back side of it, it's the back doors are facing our riverfront. It's an underutilized asset in our community that we have to take control of and make it the best that it can be. And I think that those 3 things will move Medford into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Penta.
Would you say?
2 minutes to you.
Okay. My first priority, from walking the streets for the past 3 to 4 months, has been what the kiosks have been doing to the small business person in this community. It's It happens to be a business non-friendly, and it's not a customer-friendly attitude that the city of Medford should have toward the types of businesses that we have here in this community. You know, unfortunately, we're not Somerville, we're not Arlington, we're not Lexington or Winchester. We are Medford, unique unto ourselves. And we don't have to impress anybody other than our own folks here to keep our own business people here. So to do that, what I would propose is to negotiate getting out of this deal, hire a group of people, strike that, not hire a group of people, involve the city people, involve the Chamber of Commerce, involve our small business people, and our citizens and our elected officials to come up with a plan that makes sense. Because this kiosk plan did not go before the people. There was no public meetings and no public hearing on it, and that's the reason where we're in now, right now. Second of all, I would hire a paid professional consultant, someone who is well-versed in the art of development, especially for mixed uses, whether it be for residential, commercial, or a combination of both, and with something that might be a little bit creative. We haven't seen that for over 28 years. Right now, we're operating with an Office of Community Development with 1.5 people. You don't get development out of something like that. That what we would look at, I would change that office to Business and Cultural Affairs, which includes the arts, our history, and it would also include development in our community, and that would be a prerequisite requirement for any developer coming in. And lastly, and most importantly, our public safety, to me, is of a great concern right now. We have a Medford Police Department that's in a deplorable condition. It has asbestos, it has electrical that doesn't work. You have police officers that go into a building each and every day that just don't want to be in that building. And what does that do? That affects their morale. And when it affects their morale, it affects you, the taxpayers of this community, when they do their job. So we're going to do this in a 3-year period. We don't need 7 years to do it.
Thank you, Mr.
We can
Penta.
do this in 3 years.
2
Thank
minutes.
you.
Thank you. Ms. Muccini-Burke, do you have a 1-minute follow-up here?
Thank you, Kerry. I think it's important to understand that the parking program that was put in place went through a very public process with City Council voting for it.
Audience, we're going to ask you to
and
respect the
approving
candidates. They need their time to talk. We'll have to give her more time if you're going to interrupt. Thank you.
Thank you. It went through a very public process, and right now we have what is there now, and we need to make it the best it can be. There are changes that I've offered over the last several months that have come from several of the business owners and the residents alike. They want us to do some more single heads. They'd like to see some machinery that we can use so that people can get permits, so that they don't have to feed a kiosk. And they also, another item that I had suggested was also having something similar to a Charlie card so that people wouldn't have to deal with putting in their plates. There are several recommendations that I've made. I hope that you'll visit the website to see, because we can make this work. It would cost us $1.1 million in the first year to vacate this contract. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 1-minute rebuttal here.
Well, I respectfully disagree with my competition here, because in Resolution 14472 of May 20th, 2014, what was presented before the Medford City Council was an opportunity for the mayor of this community to go out and secure a contractor for a 10-year period of time. 3 bids came in, 3 of them all asked for a 10-year contract. The Medford City Council on that particular night voted to allow the mayor to go and get one of those 3, for which happened to be Republic, and to secure the negotiations up to a 10-year period. But at the same time, as a part of the vote of that city council, which is part of the records, is the fact that they had to come back and show what the city of Medford would cost if the city of Medford were to do it. They came back in, I believe, in September 10th of 2014. And when there was a group of people in that room, business people, who pushed back on that because they had no public involvement, the fact of the matter was, the mayor took it back. And what he did, a month later, almost to the exact day, he signed the contract with no final vote by the Medford City Council.
Thank you, Mr.
No
Penta.
public hearing, no public input.
John, John, our next question is from you. I think we're staying with the parking theme here.
I'm sorry.
As you can imagine, we did receive a lot of questions about parking. More specifically, how do you think the city can change the parking program so that people will be able to park in the city's business district while still ensuring that there's sufficient turnover? How will you bring business owners into the conversation?
Mr. Penta, 2 minutes.
First thing I would do is to bring the business owners in. This would be the time for the Chamber of Commerce to step up to the plate, because they're all business people in this community. Take the politics out of the whole system and let them know that this administration, my administration, wants to work with them, and I would like to get their ideas. I would like to have the Medford City Council be part of it. I would like to have a public input problem for the taxpayers of this community. But more importantly, and most importantly, the only way you can do this is to present something to start the ball rolling. What I would do would be offering a traffic enforcement program, of a 2-hour traffic enforcement program in our downtown areas. Hire part-time individuals to come in, and at that point in time, we would take a look and see just what we need to do, how far we have to go with this particular program. Contrary to my competition, who wants to tweak the program and allow seniors to park for nothing, well, if I was Republic Parking, that's another hit that you're doing against me, taking money away from me. I wouldn't go along with that. We don't have to do that. We don't have to cater to a group of people. All we have to do is have something that's uniform, that works, and people understand it, and everybody's on the same playing field. That's what this administration wants, to put everybody on the same playing field, not to pit one age group against another age group, one business against another business, one part of town against another part of town. You can't do it, because every business district in this city of Medford is unique unto itself, just like every residential district is unique unto itself. That's what I would do. I would make it inclusive, transparent, and open to the public and to business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Muccini-Burke. 2 minutes.
Thank you. First off, there has to be a full audit of all the equipment on the streets. Republic has to be held accountable that the equipment is in working order all the time, not some of the time, which is what we're finding right now. Secondly, I think we need to do a re-rollout of the whole ambassador program. As you realize, it went last year during blizzard after blizzard after blizzard. We need to re-roll out the program. Some people in our community still don't realize that they can use their smartphone to put time on the machines. We need to educate the public again, because we have seen that the turnover is happening, and you're able to visit some of the businesses in the squares now that you couldn't stop at without maybe traversing it 5 times around. We need to let shop owners be accountable for their patrons and be able to add time if someone needs it. If you are at the hair salon and it's taking extra time and you're in a lot that only limits you to 3 hours, let's put the faith in the shop owners that they can contact either online, with their phone, or a phone call, whatever works for them, that they can add time for their patrons' services so that they don't lose customers. That's what we need to do. Also, I have looked at a survey, and I have asked if people were willing to have a senior citizen pass. And I think that our seniors have worked so hard in this community that they deserve the benefit of that service. So that is definitely something that I would propose. Also, I just mentioned something like the Charlie card, where you could put money on a card if it's $10 because maybe you don't drive down to the squares very often, or a permit program where maybe it's $50 per year, and that entitles you to park within the time constraints in our community without having to visit a kiosk. Those are suggestions. Those are negotiations that will have to take place between the administration and the Republic Parking. And also, we need to hear from our city councilors, who also are in touch with the people, to make sure that we're doing what everybody feels is the right thing to do in regards to this program. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, do you have a 1-minute rebuttal here?
What I find interesting about this is when this whole program was rolled out, and questions such as this, which are arising right now, was never introduced, ever entertained. My competition never offered any of these things. Medford City Council asked on 3 separate occasions to have public meetings and public hearings after it was presented back to us that the mayor was going to go forward with this program in September of 2014. These bounty hunters that have come into the city of Medford are collecting 65% of your money, not our money, your money. That's number one. Number two, Republic Parking. How many seniors in here can negotiate, especially on a stormy day or when the sun is glaring? They can't even figure out how to get to the thing and put their number plate in there. Never mind stick a credit card or a Charlie card. We're supposed to make this thing easy. 45% of the people in this community are senior citizens. And if you go around and ask them how to negotiate this whole program, they couldn't tell you. And they'll also tell you when they have their family and friends to come and visit or go shopping, they won't do it after that first time because it's too cumbersome for them to work with.
Thank you. 1 minute, Ms. Muccini-Burke.
Well, I just have to say once again that the City Council was apprised of this process. I was the financial person. I was the one that had to compare and contrast the 3 vendors that furnished information for the RFP. So I was the money person. I got to look and compare at all of them. But what we did go to the City Council, they did approve the RFP in detail, So either they didn't read it or they read it and they were happy with it. And then I just want to back up one more piece, is that the committee that was put in place, their first two recommendations was to have enforcement, number one, and number two, meters or kiosks, number two. That was their first and second recommendation from the Parking Commission that had been set up back several years ago. And City Council was kept apprised every step of the way. There were a lot of changes made after its implementation. More changes need to be made, and the Mayor's office needs to be the face of this program and take responsibility for it. Thank you.
Thank you. We are moving on from parking, and our third question comes from Rita.
Good evening, candidates. There has been discussion that Lawrence Memorial Hospital might be closed and its services transferred to Melrose Wakefield Hospital. As mayor, what steps will you take to keep our city's hospital open and preserve it as a thriving and vibrant health care facility?
2 minutes, Ms. Muccini-Burke.
Thank you very much. That is a fabulous question, and it's so important to the vitality of this community. Many of us rely on that institution. We do not want to see its doors closed. There was an opportunity almost over a year back, for it to partner up with the Partners Program, Brigham and Women, Mass General. And that was almost to the end line, and then it was kiboshed. I think that we need to go back to that structure to get them a partner that can finance them so that they're able to keep their doors open, remain the community hospital that we know and we love, so that they can continue to prosper in our community. We don't want to have to go to Melrose or Winchester to visit a hospital or an emergency room. It's very important that the Mayor's office work closely with that nonprofit to make it succeed in all avenues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penta. 2 minutes.
I, along with my colleague Rick Caviello, were the first two elected officials in the city of Medford to be concerned about whether the Mass General Hospital Partners was going to incorporate the Lawrence Memorial Hospital with the Melrose Wakefield Hospital. Since that time until now, there's been many meetings, and I've been apprised of them, and I've been a part of them. I want to see the Lawrence Memorial Hospital stay, because to me, it's one of the basic ingredients that this community has that they can proudly say belongs here in the city of Medford, because that's where it started. There are a group of individuals right now at the Mass General who are possibly negotiating with the Lawrence Memorial to keep it separate and distinct from that of the Melrose Wakefield Hospital. Unfortunately, there's already been a group of doctors at the Lawrence Memorial Hospital who have left or have changed their position and now are going to be part of partners. The only way we can save this, and the only way we can keep this as a community resource, is to make sure and to ensure by you letting your elected officials know, and the mayor's office, whoever that person might be, and hopefully it's me, that we won't let go of this subject matter, because it belongs here to be reviewed and discussed. Now, right now, what they're talking about, if anything stays at all, is maybe it might stay. One of the things that was the drawback to this whole negotiation process was that if the Lawrence Memorial Hospital was to have been taken over by partners, there was nothing in the deal, so to speak, that said their certification would take place immediately. That was the drawback, because there was a 15-year time period for which this whole process would take place, this completion. So within that 5-year time period, there was nothing that talked about the certification, because if the Lawrence Memorial Hospital was certified right during the first year, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. We would have a better understanding and knowledge that the Lawrence Memorial would stay. Unfortunately, when we had change of Attorney Generals, the new Attorney General coming in recognized, or thought she recognized, the fact that this was not a good deal. We're back at the drawing boards, but hopefully cooler heads will prevail and the Lawrence Memorial Hospital will stay in Medford.
Ms. Muccini-Burke, do you have a 1-minute follow-up here?
Thank you. I think what I've come to realize over the last 4 years is that the Mayor's office is all about cultivating and building partnerships. And when we do that, when we approach things in that manner, we're able to succeed and we're able to come up with the best answer and finish line for whatever the issue may be. So it's, once again, this would be a partnership effort. So it would include our state partners, even our federal partners, to bring them into this process, and of course Lawrence Memorial Hospital and their board and their trustees. So with that being said, I think that it's very important for the Mayor's office to be that conduit, to fight for the things that are important in our community, and also to work with the citizens as well as that hospital to make sure that it remains in Medford and open, with open doors. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 1-minute follow-up here.
Well, part of the issue revolves around the fact that there's absolutely no transparency, no conversation between the hospital and their employees. So if you were to go to that hospital on any one given day and ask an employee what's going on, they would tell you they don't know. All their jobs are up for grabs. That's the way they feel, other than a certain few doctors. So if anything stays as they say it's going to stay, your emergency would stay, your ambulatory care would stay, and your prompt care seems to be the only three things right now that are going to stay, if in fact this merger takes place. The other part of the argument, so to speak, would be this. I made an offering that the top 2 floors in the hospital become now the locations for many doctors here in the city of Medford. And by having many doctors here in the city of Medford put their offices there, that would be an added thrust and a concern, a positive concern for the Mass General partners to say, hey, wait a minute, Medford does have something to offer, so they don't have to figure out how to fill those vacant spots in those vacant rooms. So if they take the first 2 floors and they have the top 2 floors in the hospital used for our doctors here in the city of Medford, it's a consideration that they're being reviewed with right now.
Thank you. Our next question from the panel comes from Allie.
Good evening. The Medford Public Library is more than 50 years old and in serious need of updating. What are your plans for the building and for improving library services? What is your vision for what makes a great public library in the 21st century?
Mr. Penta, this goes to you first for 2 minutes.
I'm glad this question was asked. For the past 6 years, the Medford Public Libraries had to get a waiver from the Commonwealth of Mass. A waiver, that means they had to get an exception because they weren't paying the $225,000, so they did not include it in their budget, for which they should each and every year. This present administration allowed that to take place. A waiver, for anyone's understanding, is only an exception to the rule in any one particular year, 2 at the very most. We did it for 6 years. But amazingly this year, because Friends of the Chevalier, a lot of people are now getting disgusted as to how the Medford Public Library operates and how it could operate and how it should operate. They made their voices known. They made their voices known to the City Council and to residents in this community. And by so doing, mysteriously, this administration found something like $256,000 to get the library through whatever it has to get through at the present time. I don't intend to do that. A budget will tell you what the dollar and cents are to make a library work. A budget will also tell you what you can and cannot do financially. A budget will also tell you what's the wish list that needs to take place to make that place become the cultural community and the educational part of this community. Incorporating that, we might even think about having a cafe where people could come in, read a book, have a cup of coffee, meet their friends, whatever it might be. And it also could be a thrust to our Medford public and private schools students in there to come in and find education at a great spot in this community for development. Structurally, the building is sound. I think what you need to do is to go out and find people who would look at that building and tell you what the best way to fix it. And lastly, what I would do, I would take our Medford Vocational School and I would have the folks at that school come down there with their students and look at the internal part of that school, whether it's the floors, the racks, the shelves, the tables, whatever it might be. It would be a great learning process and problem-solving ability for those students with their teacher to do, and the pride would come back to this community.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Ms. Muccini-Burk.
Thank you, Perry. I think the library is an integral part of our community, of our whole, young to old, we all utilize the library, and I think that it's very important that we work with the trustees once again to come up with the best plan of action for the building and the facade of that facility. There is a second floor that's located in the library that's underutilized at this point, and it's quite a bit of space that we could open up in order to turn that library into something that is very, very meaningful and has a lot of thoughtful places that we're able to bring our children to and enjoy the surroundings. So I think that there's a lot that we can do with the building itself. The glass windows, to me, I personally like the glass windows, so I think it's a nice way to let that light in, but there's things that we need to do to expand upon the opportunities that the library can say. But backing up a little bit, it's also very important that we staff the library with people that are motivated, that are enthusiastic, that really want to open up the doors so the minute you walk in, you feel like you're welcomed and that you can really do some wonderful things in there. And I think that's what we're seeing over the course of the last 5 or so years. We're seeing a whole new breath of librarians that are really creating a culture of involvement, and they're active in our summer programs as well. So I think just as important as the facility itself is the people that are working in the building, and we need to do everything we can to entice the best quality people to work in that facility. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, do you have any follow-up here? Yes.
This is going to be an interesting response because let me just tell you, you can talk about people and having the vitality into the building, but if you're not getting your money in the budget for it, we just went through a budgetary process where the director of the Medford Public Library said For the past 4 years, he had a wish list, and his wish list was not allowed to be presented to the Medford City Council for its review. He was told not to present it. You cannot operate a city like this with department heads being told you can't present something. I don't care what the cost would have been. We need to know what's going on. You talk about your bathrooms, you talk about your employees, you talk about your time schedules, you talk about what the library needs. That's the whole problem within this community. We've been in neutral for way too long. We've got to put ourselves in drive. And the people of this community who are paying the taxes need to know one simple thing, that the mayor of this community is on top of his game and on top of every single thing that you, the taxpayers, are paying for, because that's his job.
1 minute, Ms. Muccini-Burk.
I also think that the people of this community need to know that they have a mayor that listens and that doesn't just react to things, that actually works with the community, works with the trustees, works with the families and the seniors who are utilizing the building so that we can come up with the best place that it can be. And that takes a concerted effort to bring people together, to listen, and to end up in a place where you may not have ever expected to end up because you got such great ideas along the process. So to me, it's all about the process we take and listening to the people and then coming up with the best thing we can at the very end of the process. So I will be that mayor that will work with the citizens, will work with everyone that wants to come down and participate, a diverse, inclusive mayoral office that is willing to work hard, roll their sleeves up, and I will be that mayor for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question from our panel comes from Penny.
Good evening. Good evening. Would you support changes to the city charter? Specifically, what is your view of ideas to have term limits for the mayor and to elect some or all of the city council members by ward instead of at large?
2 minutes, Ms. Muccini-Burk.
Thank you very much. That topic has come up several times over the last 20 years that I've been involved in municipal government, and I've always been a strong supporter of the ward representation element to the charter. I think that it allows many more people to get involved, many more people to run at nominal cost as opposed to the cost that it takes to run citywide at this point. So I definitely, from a charter perspective, I think that's one of the elements that has to be investigated further, and hopefully the people will agree that that is the model that they would like to take forward. Term limits is a whole different other thing to me, because every 2 years when you're running for mayor and city council and school committee, it's the voters that determine whether or not they want you to remain in office. So I have a little bit more trouble as far as term limits go that you just mentioned. But I think that there's several models out there. I think one of them is the ward representation, and the other is looking at possibly elongating some of the terms that go with certain offices so that it's not an all or nothing every 2 years that you're basically year 2 you're running for re-election again. But maybe allow those terms to be a little longer. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Penta.
I have been a strong supporter of a charter review in the city of Medford for years, since the first time it came about. A group of citizens got together. As a matter of fact, it was presented before the council. I was a supporter of it then. Unfortunately, the council chose not to be involved with the charter, alleging that it should be coming from the citizenry. We haven't had a charter change in the city of Medford for 30 years. You've had the same mayor for 28 years. So you really don't know what needs to be changed because nothing's been offered by way of a positive vote, either from the community or from the elected officials. Not only do I support a charter change, I would support anything that the taxpayers feel would be important, whether it's term limits, whether it's for ward councilors, whether it's to take the mayor off the school committee, whether it's to put the city auditor under the control of the city council, so there's legitimate checks and balances. This is your city. No elected official owns this. It's your city. And to make your city work and function correctly, I'll ask every one of you out there, you all have jobs, and I'm quite sure those that do have jobs and are working, you're reviewed in your workplace. I'm quite sure your director of personnel, or whoever your supervisor is, reviews your performance, annually or every other year. We haven't had a review in 30 years. That's unconscionable as far as I'm concerned. And I would support it going on the ballot immediately. Thank you.
1 minute.
I likewise support the charter review question going on the ballot. I certainly think that the city council could take with the people that want to see change in the charter to review the process, the City Council has the authoritative right to put it on the ballot without someone having to go out and get 6,000 signatures. So I definitely support that. I think that the City Council should step up if they feel that the citizens out there really want to do a charter review. It certainly is time. It's been 28 years. I'm not sure, but possibly my opponent offered this charter back then. But it's definitely, the time has come for a review. The time has come to put the commission into place and to make recommendations based on public hearings with the citizens at large. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 1 minute rebuttal.
One of the things I think folks really need to understand is this is a distinction between my opponent and myself. If my opponent was that concerned that a charter change is necessary, my opponent would have been speaking up about this a long time ago, even during her campaign. I have been talking about this since day one. I have been an advocate of a charter review. Not just now, but the records will show it. My name is attached to it. We believe there's a John Storella out there who first brought this whole idea up so many years ago. A charter change is nothing to be afraid about. A charter change is good. It's healthy for the city. And if the taxpayers feel that they want to keep everything the way it is, so be it. But at least you'll have an opportunity to make that decision. You haven't had it. It's the same thing with the kiosk. You haven't had this opportunity. So embrace it. If you hear somebody talking about a charter change, come up with some ideas. What do you think you'd like to see? Put it on the ballot. It's your right. This is your city, not any politician's city. This is your taxpayers' money at work, and that's what you should be doing, speaking up on behalf of yourselves.
Thank you. Moving back to our panel, Dan has the next question.
Revitalization of Medford Square and other business districts was mentioned by a number of questioners. One spoke for many in asking, Medford has consistently lagged surrounding cities and towns in revitalizing its central square. What plans do you have to make Medford Square become a magnet for commercial and marine activities like restaurants, small businesses, and waterfront attractions? Medford seriously needs to reinvent itself.
2 minutes to Mr. Penta.
The first thing I would do, I would change the Office of Community Development and I would call it the Office of Cultural and Business Affairs. I would incorporate a person who is a professional grant writer who can understand how to put history, the arts, and development together here in our city with a mixed-use opportunity. We in the city of Medford own a tremendous piece of property along the waterway and along the parkway that comes around to where the Senior Citizen Center is over there. I would make an offering, or have the city make an offering through this grant writer to a professional developer to let them know that we have the property, all you have to do is build on it. We will give you a 5-year tax break with the condition that you hire Medford residents first. Now, putting that aside, that's going to be an enticement for someone to come in here and look at our city and saying, hey, wait a minute, we can partner with these people, we can work together. This is what took place in Somerville. What they did is they went out there and they partnered. Now, this is where you beg, borrow, and steal from your other surrounding communities to see how it can work, and will it work within your own community. We've never done that. We only have 1.5 people in the Office of Community Development. The current administration has never, ever walked the streets, because I have walked every square in every business district of this community, and they've never seen anyone from the Office of Community Development or the Mayor's office for the purposes of development or revitalization of any parts in here. We're going to do this under my administration, because the reason why we're going to do it, we are a good city. We have an awful lot to offer, and a lot of people right now don't even know what we have to offer. We've got the Mystic, we have our education, we have our arts, the Historical Society. You have so many things sitting out there. And you know something? I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for your children and your grandchildren and what our future generations are going to be here in the city of Medford. We don't have to recreate anything, because what we have is already here. We have to embellish upon it. We have to make it better, want to make it better, and we have to spend some money to make some money. That's what good business is about.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Ms. Muccini, Burk, to you.
Thank you very much. I think once again we have to go back to that master plan that was developed by great citizens in our community in 2005. It has sat on the shelf. To me, that's a tragedy that people invested so much time and energy into a wonderful product, and then it lied dormant there. So the first order of business would to bring back that plan, get it off the shelf, get the dust off of it, revise it for some of the things that are important to us today, like smart streets, full streets, bike ped, all the novice things that have come about in the last few years that could change the dynamics of that master plan. Once that's in full force and that has been vetted out, then we need to get the developer in, especially the Medford Square end. We need to spend money to get a great developer in there that's going to do the mixed use. They're going to do inclusionary zoning, because hopefully we'll have an ordinance by then that requires it. We're going to have arts as a component of that space as well. I think it's very vital to that end of Medford Square that we put everything we have from the mayor's office as well as OCD into that area to bring the people there, and then the businesses will follow likewise. Also, one of the things that I've been talking about is the Salem Partnership. It's a group of invested business people, from the hospital to the hotel to the university. It's bringing the brain power of that community to the table without looking at a selfish interest. They're looking at the betterment of the entire community. It's a way to get money into the development, because then everybody chores in, puts the money in, and they're all able to hire an economic development planner that is part of that commission as well. Likewise, we need to look at our zoning ordinance for linkage to see if we can get some monies put in for planning purposes so that we can augment that staff immediately before we get into the next budget cycle. Those are two recommendations I would make very quickly, implement, and then get Medford Square back on the map and wake it up. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute follow-up.
What's interesting about this master plan that goes back to 2005, we've had 3 master plans that go back for the last 20 years under the present administration. So maybe we should just dust off all 3 of them and find out what's in there and take the best of the best, okay? That's what you paid for. That's number 1. Number 2, when you're talking about development and how development is going to work with the master plan for Medford Square, again, it's the present administration that's done nothing about it. And I find it a little perplexing into the response, for which my opponent has been part of the present administration. Now all of a sudden, it seems to come out with, this is what we need to do. Well, for the last 5 years, nothing like that has come about or talked about. It needs to be talked about. Now this is where she and I are going to separate, and I think the both of us are on the same page. We want to see the best for the city of Medford. We want to make sure that the city of Medford moves forward. And to do that, you need to dissect my opponent and myself and our ideas. Thank you.
1 minute, Ms. Buccini-Burke.
There's also things besides the building that could go on, is to bring back the facade program that we had through OCD funds. We need to bring that back so that we're a match, we're a partner with the businesses so that we can clean up our streets. There's also the Adopt-A-Site that the Chamber of Commerce had sponsored for so many years. Let's bring those things back into Medford so that we show the pride that we all have. I mean, it's amazing. Looking out here, I'm in awe actually looking out. And I know that there are a lot of people in this community that want to give up their time, they want to volunteer, they want to help. So we need to do some other things. We need to give back to the people. And those are a couple of the avenues that we could do in order to beautify the storefronts. Our squares, we have some lovely squares with some great little shops in them, but we need to go out and cultivate business to make them the best they can be. And that's certainly a priority, and I promised I would have a program manager that reported directly to the mayor's office in order to implement some of these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to our panel. Our next question is from John.
Will you make it a priority of your administration to address the opiate crisis? If so, please discuss your plan on how you would deal with this issue.
2 minutes, Ms. Buccini-Burke.
Thank you very much. I was lucky enough to sit in on the district attorney's meetings that she had, District Attorney Ryan, on the opiate crisis. And she has brought together some of the greatest minds in our Middlesex County, as well as some of the communities that have really been on the cutting edge of addressing these issues. And some of the things that she's brought about was where does it all start? And I was astounded to learn that dentist offices they play a big role because they're able to give out the medication that then turns into other issues. So there are a lot of different things that came to the surface during some of these meetings. The city also just hired a full-time person, opiate coordinator, to reach out to the schools, which we've been doing through a community grant with other Melrose, 5 other communities. We had been doing that in place, but now we have a dedicated person just for Medford that's visiting the schools, working with the police department, bringing all the players together that can make change happen. The other side effect is that our police and fire, they do need to carry the Narcan pen. They need to be prepared, and we're even hearing school nurses are going to be trained in that in the near future. So those are all the elements to stop it, but we need to get the education into the classroom to stop it up front before it happens, before we need Narcan. Let's address it at the ground level with our children in middle school so that they're aware of what this can do to them. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Penta.
I strongly support Medford's crusade on this opium addiction crusade. That's what I'm going to call it, because I believe in the city of Medford there's been in excess for the last 5 years, well, before 84, I think it's 83 or 84 folks that have died from this. The effect is not on the person who dies. The effect is on the parents or the loved ones, the husband, the wives, the brothers and the sisters. We need to make sure that those folks are taken care of as well. The governor of the Commonwealth just announced today a new program that I believe he intends to roll it out in sometime in November. This is on the opiate crisis throughout the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What we need to do, since we have just hired a brand new person to be Medford's crusader on this particular subject matter, we need not only to work, but we need to understand where we're going with this. This community as a whole has to understand it is in an epidemic proportion right now. Every time someone dies, it affects somebody's family. Wife, father, brother, sister, mother, grandparent, or whatever it might be. A few months ago, we had a vigil that took place in Medford City Hall. The place was filled with almost 500 people, and we heard story after story after story of who was addicted, who overcame addiction, and who still is in addiction. And if you're out of addiction, and if you've been out of it for 3 or 4 years, whatever it might be, you can easily fall right back into it. It's not a done deal. It's a work in progress each and every day. And you have to put your hearts out to those people who have to go through this. Medford has a role to play in this. It's an educational role. It starts in the elementary grade school and it works its way all the way up to the high school, public as well as private schools. It's a subject matter that won't go away, but it can greatly be resolved and reduced if we all work together on this and understand it's a problem here in this city. It has to be addressed, and you can't just address it once. It's an ongoing problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have 1 minute follow-up here?
Thank you. Unfortunately, I think many of us have been touched by a family that has had this issue in their homes and or death in their homes, and it's there for the grace of God. It saddens us, and we all have to reach out to try and conquer this horrible thing that's happening in our community and throughout the Commonwealth. But I also think that with that comes a respect factor. We need to educate our public servants so that they treat the families and the addicted person with respect and dignity. And that has to be a key role, and that's only through education. Because it's, we all know what our police and fire go through on a daily basis, but they need to have that understanding of what the family is enduring during those times as well. And again, it saddens me that we have to even talk about that, this topic this evening, because it is a crisis in our community. It needs to be addressed, and it has to be through education for our young people. Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Penta.
Without being repetitious, and I think this is something that Stephanie and I both agree upon, it's a problem. It's an addiction here within this community. Same thing with folks who have gambling, same thing with folks who might have an alcohol problem. But the addiction of the opiates has really gotten to a point right now. It's in an uncontrollable state. And it's so easy for kids and adults to get this who are addicted by it. And again, I just think we have to be vigilant. We have to watch and see what's going on. I'll give you an example. There was a lady who called me up in a particular part of town, and she saw a deal take place at 11:30 at night right out in front of her house. And that's not the first, it's not the second, it's the third time. And every time you go to report it, unfortunately, by the time the police come, they're gone. So it's something that's taken place not only on the main streets, it's on the side streets, it's in the neighborhoods. It's in front of your own home. It possibly could happen. You just need to be vigilant. We all have to be vigilant and all recognize the fact that this is a serious problem within our community. And we just have to stay abreast of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as promised, we are moving on to our lightning round. We now have a series of questions that each candidate should be able to answer in 30 seconds or less. So to that, Rita, you are up.
Okay. What is the first action you plan to take on your first day as mayor?
Mr. Penta.
The first action I would take, I would probably go around and talk to every single municipal employee at City Hall. Welcome them into my administration and let them know that we have an open door policy as it relates to what your concerns might be, as well as my concerns. And after we address that, I think the next thing would be to do administratively, look at the functions that need to take place. Now, we can do that either on November 4th, or we can do that in January, one way or the other, but that's what will take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muccini-Burke.
I likewise think that the first thing that has to happen is the personnel within the building. People need to know that things will be different. They need to know that it's not going to be business as usual. They need to know that I come from the business background, so customer service is of importance. Secret shoppers might be showing up at City Hall someday soon. So I think that it's really important that people, that we deal with our personnel issues and make sure that we have the best capable, qualified people that are in all of the offices, and then secondly, to get them out of their offices and onto the floors of the various departments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question from Ally.
What do you think is the most important legacy of Mayor McGlynn's administration?
Ms. Muccini-Burke, you're up first.
Mayor McGlynn has been our mayor for 28 years, and I'd have to say that the most important legacy has been his inclusiveness, how he has opened up this city to all different denominations and allowed people to play a role in his administration and in his committees. He's definitely been a mayor for the people, and I applaud him for that.
Thank you, Mr. Penta.
I think Mayor McGlynn's legacy is to know that Bob Penta was at his side each and every day.
Thank you. Our next question is from Penny.
What is the one important way in which your administration will differ from Mayor McGlynn's?
Do we need to hear that again?
This is a quick
What
fire
is
question.
the one important way in which your administration will differ from Mayor McGlynn's?
Ms. Muccini-Burke.
Well, thank you for that. That certainly isn't a quick fire question. But I think that the one thing is, again, I'm going to bring my business background. I wasn't born under a desk at the state legislature. I have a whole different philosophy of how the city should run. So my legacy will be my mayoralship will be very different than Mayor McGlynn's. And likewise, we have to bring that facet into City Hall for economies of scale in order to be productive and to treat the people from a customer service perspective with respect when they come into the offices. So it will be a very different administration than Mayor McGlynn, and it'll be much more business focused. Thank you.
Mr. Penta?
My administration would revolve around the fact that you could come and see the mayor anytime you want. My administration would also make it very well aware that the Medford City Council is going to play an integral part on what this administration will have to do. Rather than reading about something in the newspaper, you will be told ahead of time, either by a telephone call or announcement for a meeting. You will have me, the mayor, attend the Medford City Council meeting, and I won't send an emissary.
Thank you. Our next question from the panel, still in the lightning round, comes from Dan.
Well, I think our question has been precluded, at least in part, but I will ask it anyway. Mayor McGlynn has not made it a practice to attend city council meetings. Will you?
And Mr. Penta, you do get this first.
Mayor McGlynn has chosen not to attend the city council meeting. He's only attended one in 28 years, and that's when we had a real big problem on Mystic Avenue on a methadone clinic. And he came after the third week when there was over 300 people in that room. He finally came, and he turned around, gave the check back to the developer who wanted to come in there and do the work. Does the charter say that the mayor has to attend the council meeting? Absolutely not. But the charter doesn't say that he can't. And I would not preclude anything in giving an opportunity for the citizens to know where I stand, especially on issues that I would be presenting to the Medford City Council, for the City Council to review, and for the taxpayers to know what it's all about.
Thank you. Ms. Muccini-Burke.
I likewise would plan on attending council meetings. I've sat on that side for 15 years. I understand the frustrations that go into being a counselor and feeling that you're not being heard. It will definitely be an inclusive administration with both the school committee and the city council, and they will all play a role in how Medford runs into the future. So I definitely plan on going to the city council meetings at least quarterly or as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. One more lightning round question from John.
Please identify one quality about your opponent that you admire.
Ms. Muccini-Burke, you get this first.
He works very hard. He works very, very hard for the people, so I applaud him for that.
And Mr. Penta.
What I like about Stephanie is that I like her, okay? And the interesting part about this whole campaign is that our differences are so different that she's given all the community an opportunity, like I have, to make your choice. Our differences are big enough for you to say, rather than close enough, because that makes it harder. So I thank her for offering that, but at the same time, I like her.
That's a good way to end the lightning round. So back to our 2-minute questions. Rita, you're up.
As mayor, you will chair the school committee. Despite improvements, a significant number of families in Medford send their children to private schools because they believe their children will not receive a good education in the public system. What will you do to change their perception?
Mr. Penta, 2 minutes.
First thing I would do is I would address the fact that we have students go to private school, charter schools, as well as our public schools, and I would want to get the numerical count of where that all fits into the whole program. Second of all, as I said in my introduction, I want to enhance our public school system because that's what I would have control over as the mayor sitting as the chairperson of the school committee. But the part about education, I think there really has to be an interesting part, is you have to get parents involved. We are a community so diverse right now in population and ethnic backgrounds and single parents that takes a very important part of your daily appetite, so to speak, on how to address all these problems and these issues. So whether it's English being a second language, first language, or whatever the language might be, that's something that needs to be addressed. I think parents need to have a responsibility, single or not, that even though you send your child to school, you still have that responsibility to know what's going on with your child in that school. Unfortunately, why and how you're a single parent, I don't know. But there has to be some sense of you realizing that while your child goes to school, that still child is under your care and control. Next, you got the issue of Common Core and Park. That is playing a real significant part here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the educational process. It's caused a lot of controversy. It's challenged MCAS testing. It's challenging parents and teachers and principals of schools as to whether this is the best and the right way to go. That needs to be looked at and addressed. But as you can see as of today, state after state after state, one at a time, is getting out of Common Core and Park because they feel it is not serving in the best interest of the students. So to resolve that, I don't know where we are here in the city of Medford because I really haven't dug that deep into it yet. But that is one of my primary goals that I will look at as chairman of the school committee. Just where are we going in the city of Medford on Common Core and Park, and how does that compare to our everyday educational MCAS testing? Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Ms. Burk.
Thank you very much, Rita. I think that the mayor has to be the champion of this community. The mayor has to be the face of what is great about our community. And likewise, we've had many, many success stories in our school systems, and possibly you just haven't heard about them because there is no champion, there is no PR, it's just not being done. So I think the first order of business is to get the word out on the great facilities we have, the great teachers. Some of them have been notarized for being the greatest in the state. So we need to let the people know that we have a fabulous institution with fabulous teachers as well. And then similarly, I think that Mr. Penta just mentioned the Common Core and Park, and there's a lot of buzz about this right now, and the state is looking into it in greater detail to determine which is the best avenue for the state to go in, which cities and towns follow suit. But Common Core has really focused on math and English, and they've actually gotten away from literature, where they want kids to be able to read textbooks and current events. They want to focus in that arena as opposed to a lot of the great literature that we may have read growing up. So Common Core Park is a whole nother animal, and it certainly is being debated heavily at the federal and state level. And I look forward to working with our State Education Commission and trustees and school committees to determine what's the best avenue as far as that goes. But getting back to your question, it had to do with how do you bring people back from our private schools. And people go to private schools for different reasons. It's not always just because they don't have faith in our public program. People make choices for their own families and what's best in their interest. But we need to bolster the public relations aspect of the city and the schools in particular, so people know the great things that are going on within those buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Penta, 1 minute follow-up.
Another one of the reasons why folks within our community send their children to a private school. You just have to go and look at some of the schools. We just got through building new schools 15 years ago. The reason why we built new schools 15 years ago, because they weren't being kept up. Here we are 15 years later, and they're in excess of $1 million worth of repairs. We're falling right into the same trap that we did 15 years ago. That's number one. Number two, just go up to the Medford Public High School. It's not very inviting to come in there. The walkway, the doors, the hallway, the cleanliness of the building. We just got through building a new state-of-the-art part on the science labs. You go up there and you think you're in a brand new building. You walk around the rest of the building and you turn around, it's dirty, it's filthy. The windows haven't been touched for over 20 years to be washed and cleaned. It's the invitation that's out there that people look at. It's perception, and if our perception is not good, a parent will not send their child to that particular school. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute, Ms. Machiney-Burk.
Thank you. I think perception and being a champion for your school system go hand in hand. People need to know what great things are happening in the building. I agree with my colleague on the entrance to Medford High School. I've talked to the superintendent about it on numerous occasions. That is the entryway. That's where the preschoolers come in. That's where the parents go to visit to determine if they're going to enroll their children in our school system. That entranceway and that needs to be the highlight of the whole school system. So money has to be spent to augment how that looks when you first approach, because sometimes you only get one bite at the apple, and it has to be a good one. So you need to put your best face on so that the public, when they first enter that building, they're not immediately turned away and discouraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is from Allie.
So we've received multiple questions about the city's infrastructure, many of them specific to certain neighborhoods and streets. There are concerns within the city about traffic and the deplorable conditions of many roads. What plans do you have to repair those roads, improve lighting, and take other steps to alleviate traffic and enhance the safety of motorists?
Ms. Machiney-Burk, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think the first thing, and something that I've advocated for my entire public life, is a capital plan. A detailed capital plan, not a list of things we need to accomplish in the next 6 months. It has to be a detailed capital plan, and that will be at the forefront of my administration. I think many of you over the 15 years when I was a counselor heard me talk about it in and out, probably too much, but you heard me address that issue, and I think that that's important not only for our roads and our sidewalks and our crosswalks, which are deplorable, but also the buildings within our community. So we really need to get to work. We need to have committee meetings with the city council and the people to really make sure that we have a capital plan that goes out 5 years and then goes out 10 years, with everybody buying in that this is the structure that we can afford within our tax system that we have at current step. Also, as far as the roads, we have Chapter 90 allotment. It's about $950,000 a year that we get from the state. We know what state roads we have in our community. The $950 doesn't even cover the state roads of 60 and 16 and whatever other roads that the buses are traveling on every day. So we really need to try and get additional funds from the state. When we do spend our Chapter 90 funds, which I think you're all seeing out there, probably driving over here tonight as a matter of fact, we need to parlay that and use our CDBG funds whenever we can to augment the projects that we're working on, and so they become complete streets. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Penta.
I think the question revolves around a cost factor. I offered before the Medford City Council what we call a street recovery program, for which the council voted 7-0. That would investigate each and every street, sidewalk, curbing, lighting, striping, that every street has a problem on. Now think about this. We just got through spending $14 million to build a new public works building, but we don't have enough men and we don't have enough equipment. So now we have to go back there and temper this all out and come to some kind of measure, so to speak, that allows us, if we're going to get involved in these type of programs, we need the equipment and we need the men. So what do? We sit down with our legislative body, which is the City Council. We also sit down with the Department of Public Works. Let's just see what they have on the books right now for streets, for tree stumps, for what are the major streets that need to be done. We're finally doing the street around City Hall. the gateway to the city, finally, I don't know if they're hot topping it right now, but it's been dug up for 2 weeks. They're finally doing Boston Avenue, a major depression in this community that needed serious, serious help. It's going to be costly and it's going to take some time. But I think what the taxpayers are looking for, that there is a program and it's going to start. It won't happen overnight, but it's being addressed. That's what this whole budgetary process will be. And I can assure you of this, in this budget, strike that. As your mayor, I will hire an outside firm to come in with fresh eyes to look over our budget, to see where we're right, wrong, where we can add or subtract. It's like buying a brand new business. I'm not just going to accept the books that are there. I'm bringing in my own person to make sure the books are going in the right direction, they're being spent properly, and we have a good fiscal hand on how and where this city needs to go and spend its money in this particular area. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute follow-up, Commissioner.
It all starts with a solid capital plan. That's the foundation for everything that this community can do and can afford to do. So we need to devote time and energy and input into getting a solid plan that people buy into so that they want to see it in year 3, that it's not just vacated like some of the plans that we've seen put on the shelf. Once you have that in place, then you have a structure in order to implement all of the projects that you want to see done. You know, there are several sidewalks and there's even more crosswalks that really need to address desperately, especially in our square where our seniors are traversing. We need to pay attention to those and prioritize the projects where we know the most people are on foot, and then we can move in from there. But it's vital that we have a capital plan to show the road. It's the road that we have to travel on as far as budgeting goes, and it allows us to see what we can afford from that perspective, as well as the state monies that we do get from Chapter 90. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Penny.
We received a number of questions about arts and culture and their importance in enhancing the city's economy and quality of life. We will summarize these questions by simply asking you what investments you would make in these areas.
Mr. Penta, 2 minutes.
Some 2 years ago, Michael Marks and myself put a resolution on the Medford City Council to finally put the Medford Arts Council on our budget agenda, and $15,000, it was 13, and the mayor gave him $15,000 on the first year. This past year, myself, along with Council Marks and Council Longo Kern, put a $30,000 request in there. The reason why we're doing this is one simple fact. The arts in this community are equally important to everything else that takes place, because that's a learning process for kids in this community. It's a learning process for adults as well, and it's an advantageous tool for this community to be recognized of having its arts, its culture, its history, to be part of where it's going and its future. Now, for years, it hadn't been recognized. I think the last time it was in the budget was 2003, that money was in there for the arts. So 2003 till now, these people have been doing this on their own. You have the West Medford Open Arts Studio. You have folks that will have on Community Day, they will tell you and show you their wares that they're selling and making and advertising for, and that's great. The next step is to hopefully, maybe not immediately, but hopefully work with the arts folks and now find them a place, a home, where they can become part not only of the city of Medford. That, to me, is going to be something that I will demand and ask for an incorporation on any developer that comes into this community that takes hold of the fact and wants to develop, whether it be Medford Square, Haynes Square, North Medford, South Medford, West Medford. In the community of Florida, I think it's Gaston, Florida, I could be wrong on the name, but I think it's Gaston, Florida. What they did is they went to all those business merchants, and there was the worst part of town, and they gave every one of those business merchants an opportunity, and especially if they were minorities, they gave them front door money, front space money, signage money to come in there, don't pay taxes, just hire people, and they did block by store by store, block by block, and they completely rejuvenated an entire part of this downtown Florida area. That's what we have to offer. We have so much to offer, we need to take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Ms. Mushini-Burk.
Thank you. There was a white paper that was just put out from Arts Boston, and they said, this is a quote, "People love where they live because of art and cultural opportunities." And certainly that is true of Medford as well. We have an immense population of artists, activists, that are willing to put themselves first in order to better the entire community. And we've been working with them, and we've been listening to them, and there is a desperate need for us to invest in them as well. Back many, many years ago when I was on the council and we first got the plans for the plan for Medford Square, I put a little amendment in there that we made sure that we had art space included as a component of our revitalization efforts in Medford Square. The time has come. We really do need a home, and maybe it's the second floor of the library. Maybe we have to look into see if that could be a mixed location that we could incorporate those things in, or maybe there's another location that we need to look at, but it's urgent that we get on board because it's so critically important in this community. We're in this beautiful theater, and now we're starting to see not only the venue being used, but we're also seeing some of the programming that's coming in, and it's because of the volunteers in our community that are so integral in making everything happen. So I definitely support a home for the arts. I think that the art community should play a role at the table when we're having development meetings, because there's a role for the public space, public art in our community, and they need to be on the ground floor when developers are coming in so that we make sure that we get the best projects out of the developers that come into our city, as well as the city itself with proper placemaking. Thank you very much.
Mr. Penta, do you have 1 minute follow-up?
One of the ways that the arts community in this community is not being recognized. Now, if you're a handicapped person or incapable of getting out, you don't have an opportunity to appreciate it. But you would if you had public access TV here in the city of Medford. We don't have it. This present city administration is sitting on $350,000 of your Verizon and Comcast money that you're paying for each and every month, but you have no public access. Do you realize that if you had public access television here, you could see sports, you could have entertainment, you could have art, you could have history, and you could have your own programs that you folks would want to make. It could be about your families, your kids, whatever it might be. We don't have it. And that's a shame here in this. This has been going on since December of 2013. Public access is a huge component for a city and town. We don't have it. Why this present administration refused to allow it, I don't know. But I can assure you of this, if and when I become mayor, you will have public access television.
Ms. Mucini-Burk, 1 minute.
Thank you. While we're on to public access, the two of us actually were on the same side of that issue when it was coming before the City Council several years ago. We both thought that TV3 had to change, it had to be revamped, and it was a closed-door operation. So we were consistent in that thought. But I just want to clarify that they did put an RFP out for an architect to build a public access station as a component of Medford High School so that the kids would then be able to use this fabulous equipment that we would be able to put in it for their shop classes and for the high school students as well. So there was an RFP for the architect, and there are plans in place to try and get a partner that can be the nonprofit that runs this entity, and I think it is needed. Tonight this would be on our public access channel. We're streaming it to government, but it really belongs in public access. And there were a lot of good people doing some really neat things back then when the doors were open. So I think it's time definitely to bring that back, but I also think that we have to get back the arts community, and they have to have a seat at the table in all future development. Thank you.
Well, Dan, a little bit preempted, but you're next.
Once again, our questions have been precluded by your initiative. But this is an important topic, and maybe since you've laid out your basic position on public access, you can think more expansively about it in response to the next question. What do you think needs to be done to revive Medford's public access cable operation so that it is as robust and useful as similar operations in Somerville, Cambridge, and other communities?
2 minutes, Ms. Mucini-Burk.
Thank you. I think we already talked a little bit about that, but I think we see some great things going on in some of the other communities where it's just a welcoming place and people are really being creative and innovative, and I desperately think that we need to bring that back to Medford. We've lost something in that whole process. Did we lose it for a reason? Yes, we did. But we need to bring it back, and we need to mandate that the board, how it's set up, the structure of the entity that runs the public access, that it's set up that it can't become a fiefdom, that people turn over, it's open for elections, and we need to ensure that when that is said and done and we get an entity in, that we can definitely do that. And also, just another thought is to look at some of our community colleges that are around us and/or universities to see if they could be a partner in this process, because it's something that they do every day, and I think that they could be play an integral role in bringing public access back to Medford, bring a professionalism to the public access entity itself, and then allowing the creative juices that we know we have in our community to flow again and to be active participants in the public access program. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 2 minutes.
Could you repeat it? Could you repeat the question?
What do you think needs to be done to revive Medford's public access cable operations so that it is as robust and useful as similar operations in Somerville, Cambridge, and other communities?
What I think needs to be done is to have a mayor who recognizes that public access belongs in our community. Take Reading, for example. The city of Reading, on every Saturday morning, they have an open door policy where people can come in, have a cup of coffee and a donut, and sit there and talk about whatever they've been doing during the course of the week, whether it's on public access or whatever they want to talk about. It's a meeting place. It's a way to bring people in and entice them as to what's going on. It's unfortunate here tonight that Medford Public Access is not cable casting this. It's an out-of-town organization. And that's wrong. It shouldn't be that way. But we're very thankful that Somerville is here doing this tonight, and I thank them publicly for doing this. Also, when we talk about possibly putting this thing up at the high school, think about it. If it's going to go up at the high school at nighttime, in the wintertime, when it's dark out, who is going to take a bus, get off at the bottom of the hill, walk all the way up, and this is going to possibly be in the back of the building? That doesn't make any sense. If you want to loop this and conduit this and have a place in downtown Medford Square or one of the other squares where it satellites itself back up to the high school, that's a different thing. Public access is supposed to be made convenient and available to the people, not inconvenient and not available to the people. Now, with that being said, public access is also an educational tool for the business community, because a lot of these folks would like to see how it works and how it can work better for their business. So if we take all of these things and put it together and realize that public access can work for this city, it has a reality factor in this community, it can make our city work better. And since you folks for Comcast and Verizon are paying for it, you should have that availability. The money should not sit at City Hall doing nothing. Thank you.
Ms. Buccini-Burke, do you have a follow-up here for 1 minute?
I agree that we should have a public access channel, and I agree that the monies have been set aside because of the fiasco that we had with the prior entity that ran that. So the investment now, at least there are funds available for us to invest in the infrastructure. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to parlay it with the students at Medford High School and Medford Vocational School. I think that's a great program. It's cutting edge to get them involved in this arena. So I think that it's very important that we get this done and get this done quickly and look for a solid partner that will be inclusive for this community and will allow its citizens to do a phenomenal job in the public process. And again, it can be used for commercials. Maybe they charge some ad fees so that they augment some of the revenue that comes in. Because prior, it was strictly the money from Comcast flowed through the city to the entity, and it went to rent and overhead, and it was never any extra funds that were generated by the entity itself. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Penta.
1 minute. What? I'm sorry.
He has a 1 minute opportunity here.
Oh, okay.
If you want it, you don't have to take it.
I think everybody in the audience has a feeling that we need public access, and it works well within our community. So without being repetitious, I think you know where I'm coming from. I want public access. You will have public access once I'm a mayor. It's going to be accessible and open to the public and to the business and to the students and to any family member who thinks that public access can work for them as a learning tool in a learning process. And that's what it's about. I'm not going to let $350,000 sit in the coffers of City Hall accumulating dust because this administration has refused to allow public access to exist. Just think if you had public access, you would have been able to see all the city council, school committee, and the mayoral candidates during the course of this election. You're sitting here because the city of Somerville is cable casting this meeting, not Medford Public Access. That is a shame. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, John. Next question. Thanks.
What steps would you take to enhance pedestrian and bicycling safety?
Mr. Penta, this is to you. 2 minutes.
You know, that's an interesting question because both Stephanie and I went to a bicycle interview maybe about 3 weeks ago, as to what we feel would work in the best interest of this community for bicycles. You have Sharrows, number one, you have what people wear, bicycle safety, and also one of the big problems with bicyclists in the city of Medford, or any city or town, they don't obey the laws. They drive right through stop signs, they don't put the proper hand signals out, and by doing that, they're causing problems. They're causing problems for the legitimate bicyclist who does what he or she is supposed to do. Now we get into the whole educational process, because that's what it is. Some of the things that need to be changed might have to go through the state legislature, as it has been as it relates to, I think it's 500 feet, they have to have a red light in the back, or 600 feet in the back, and 500 feet for the white light in the front. I'm a strong advocate that if you're going to be a bicyclist, at nighttime you should wear something that is totally reflective of your body. That would be the first thing. Second of all, I don't appreciate the fact that if they violate and they break a law and they're supposed to follow the same rules of the road, they should get a ticket, just like a car person. Lastly, and most importantly, you don't want to eliminate the enthusiasm that bicycling does have within this community. We have a bicycle rodeo that takes place once a year where youngsters in this community can come behind City Hall and learn how to ride a bike, and that's great. And that's what they should do, and maybe some adults should come down there and learn that too. But the fact of the matter is this: once these kids grow up and they see adults breaking the same laws that they've been told not to do, what happens? It becomes easy and convenient and nothing takes place. So again, I think it's a learning process. Maybe the police department has to step up its game to recognize the fact that you just can't go through a stop sign, you can't go through a red light, you can't violate the laws and expect to be treated the same as expect not to be treated the same as if you were driving a car or a moped or a motorcycle, because those folks have to obey the law. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Ms. Machini-Burk.
Thank you. I think the first step is enacting a complete streets program in our community that incorporate the bike ped into all the planning processes that take place. I think that's step number one that we have to do. Step number two is the members of the commission need to have a seat at the table. When projects are going on, they need to be there, they need to add their wisdom. I learned so much that night, and I think Bob did as well. We learned so much because we're not bikers. So we learned some of the rules that are in place, and a lot of education has to get out there, because I think there's probably a lot of people that are like us that don't understand the rules of the road to the degree that the members of the committee do. They've done yeoman's work on their own, trying to augment it. We're seeing some of the striping going on. Their first step was at the Winchester line coming down Winthrop Street. It's already brought awareness. I've already seen bicycles traveling on it and adhering to the lane that's been created for them. So I think that that's like a small piece of what a complete streets would look like. We need to take it on a much larger scale, and it needs to continue. It can't just be we have it from point A to point B, but then you can't get from B to C. We need to be able to connect the dots so that there's safe travel. It's a means of travel at this point. People aren't all in their cars. People are using it as a means of traveling, and they need to have a safe route of passage. So we need to invest in that. Part of our roads that we talked about earlier is incorporating that design element into them so that we address that on a street-by-street basis, so that we know that we're providing the best safety for our bicyclists as well as cars and walkers that we can, and it starts with complete streets. Thank you. 1
minute, Mr. Penta, follow-up?
I'm okay.
You okay? Do you have anything else to add?
I'm good.
Okay, we'll move on to Rita with the billion-dollar question.
Uh-oh.
What is your position on bringing the Green Line extension to Medford now that it has been projected to cost $1 billion more than had originally been budgeted?
2 minutes, Ms. Machini-Burk.
Well, we'll take the finances out of it for right now. I was the only counselor, when a counselor, to comment in 2010, I believe it was, on the DEIR, which is basically a report that the state issued, an environmental report. So I was the only one that did write in on that for that event, and it was in support of bringing the Green Line not only to College Ave, but also to 16. Lately, there was another metropolitan planning organization had a notice for comments as well, a comment period. And once again, I supported them accessing funds in order to bring it to 16. And I'll tell you why, is because I don't think that the trains should end behind people's homes at the College Ave area. I think that it should go out to 16. We have an opportunity for adaptive reuse with the U-Haul building that actually, as best I know, is in Somerville, not Medford, but we all think of it as being a Medford facility. But there's opportunities for the 16 end to be revitalized as well and to be redeveloped, and I think that we have to look at that as well. So the $1 billion was disturbing because they went out with a whole different format of how they were going to fund, how they were going to look into this project, and how they were going to put a team together to really get the best project out of it that we could. And when estimates come in at $1 billion, I'm sorry, you know, that's just outrageous, and they need to go back to the drawing table, go back to maybe the old methods of procurement that were on the books back then, that are still on the books now that they weren't using, and go back and get something that's reasonable that we can afford, but we need to do it. It was part of a mandate. It will bring the most air quality by bringing it to 16. So I think that they need to go back, revise, sharpen their pencils and come up with some better numbers, but we need to bring the Green Line into Medford. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Penta.
The idea of bringing the Green Line to Medford came as a result of the Big Dig. When the Big Dig was completed, there was a $790,000 appropriation in there to do a study that would take the Green Line from the, I believe it's the Charlestown section, that would take you right to Somerville to Route 16. Now, in today's day and age, $790,000 isn't going to buy you anything. But back then, that's what the money that was put in there. So when my colleague talks about the $1 billion deficit, it's almost up to $2.5 billion as of the latest reports. Don't forget, that deficit that you're talking about right now is a result when the budget was made when the economy was at its weakest point. A good projector takes the low and it takes the high. Nothing was ever projected that when times were better than they were then. And that's the problem that we're in right now. But let's take Route 16 where it is right now. Like, strike that. Let's just take what College Ave is right now and go to Route 16. What you really need is a study, because the study needs to incorporate the following. You have businesses along that whole route. So that has to be addressed as it relates to how many businesses are going to lose their spots, locations, how many employees are we going to be dealing with, and more importantly, you have 3 bridges that are going to have to be replaced. Now, these are all cost factors. And now when you get to the end of Route 16, where they want to end it, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council a few years back came out with a report that wanted to augment the Route 16 area by putting 150 units of affordable housing. Now, put this all together in your head and figure it out. Go from College Ave to Route 16 and end up with 150 units of affordable housing. Think about the impact in the West Medford community area that's going to have from people coming from Cambridge and Arlington and even parts of Medford. Think about the business loss that's going to take place, the loss of taxes, the loss of employment. That's what a legitimate study needs to do. It needs to take that all in before we say yay or nay on having this expansion. That would be intelligent planning. Thank you.
Ms. Buccini-Burke, 1 minute follow-up.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment the Metropolitan Planning Organization has done a study, and they are looking at those factors. Bringing it to 16 serves the greatest number of Medford residents. It's the most regional air quality standards that we can get from this project, enhancing the air quality. And also, we need to make sure that that study is incorporated, because one of their priorities was a negative impact on the residential neighborhoods around the College Ave area. Also, add to that, right now, the city needs to look at the zoning along the corridor, especially up towards the Ball Square area. We can't wait for the Green Line to come and then react. We need to get down and look at the zoning now, because as you probably see, people are scooping up some of the properties down there and trying to redo them under the current zoning ordinance. So I think that we really need to look hard and study that area to determine the best uses along the corridor. We don't want to impact our residential neighborhoods. There are some great neighborhoods in that vicinity. We need to make sure that we protect them. And also, we need to look at parking on a side note, that area parking permits are in place so we don't get people parking in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 1 minute.
Another part of the problem is rodent infestation. Once you start digging up that property, you're going to have to deal with rodents that are over there. As a matter of fact, that same situation is taking place right now in Medford Square where the Craddock Bridge is. By digging up that bridge and putting it over there by the water, you now have rodents along some of those businesses along Riverside Avenue. We're talking about eminent domain proceedings too, taking people's property. So if you put this all together, loss of business, eminent domain, rodents, businesses, taxes, housing that's going to take place at the end of that, sure, you talk about it might feel good for the air quality, but what's good entirely for the city of Medford? What's good for the folks in the West Medford area? What's good is only going to be determined when all of this is put on the table and you have an intelligent discussion and get the pros and the cons. That's what a feasibility study would do. Not just the wish of saying, hey, if we have this green line that goes to Route 16, it's going to make it better for us or worse for us. It doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. That's not good government.
Thank you. So looking at the time here, I believe we're moving to our final question.
We're going to keep going. Earlier this year, there was a much reported incident involving a police officer who was captured on video threatening a motorist. What steps, if any, do you think need to be taken to prevent such incidents from occurring in the future?
Mr. Penta, you are up 2 minutes.
The first thing I would do, because I've seen this for many years on our budget, the present chief of police has asked for education for his police officers, and unfortunately, to some degree, he hasn't got any, if not all, of what he was looking for. There has to be an educational process that takes place, whether it's for a police officer, a fireman, a school teacher, any and all municipal and school department employees. They have to come under the same umbrella. That's the first thing. Second thing, I cannot and I will not answer anything on the Officer LeBurt case, because I am not the mayor, I'm not the chief of police, I don't have all the facts. All I can tell you is this, and I think my opponent and I will agree. The comments that were made were inappropriate, should have never taken place, and I don't think anybody would have stood for that. What took place in this disciplinary hearing, I don't know. I was not privy to it. I was not a part of it. But I will assure you of this. One of the beginning things I will do, after meeting with all my municipal employees on opening day, is go to each department one at a time, and there will be a proclamation sent out that will not be stood for is insults, rudeness to people, threats to people, and most importantly, people who don't do their job. That's where the door is going to be. See you later. Goodbye.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Ms. Muccini-Burk.
Thank you. Likewise, I won't comment on the particulars of this case, but in general, I think that we all witnessed something that was a horrible situation for us to see. It can't happen. The police cannot be the escalators of incidents, and the drivers shouldn't be the calm ones in a situation like that, which is what we saw on the video. Of course, there's probably a lot more that went into that both of us were not privy to, but the civil service laws that kicked in is what made this take so long to be the hearing that was actually canceled today due to a resignation. But it's important to understand that the civil service laws are there in place to protect people as well, to protect the employees from people just being fired off the get-go. So the process that went into this did work. It did accomplish what it needed to. But I think getting back to the question itself is that it has to be an educational component. The police we're not in their shoes, so we don't understand that split second of things that happen throughout the country. We're not in those shoes, so we can't always think that what they did was wrong because they did it. But I think that they need to understand that they should be the calming effect out there, and that they should use that training to implement those types of changes. And I think that it should never happen again, and I think that the files at the police department also have to be opened up to the mayor's office as well, so that you keep abreast on some of these issues that may be percolating and escalating, that you can take care of them before you get to this point. That was a horrible situation.
Mr. Penta, do you have any follow-up here? 1 minute?
I'm satisfied with my comments.
Anything else?
I'm good. Thank you.
I think we have time, then we can move on to Penny for the next question.
I know we don't want to hear this, but last year brought record snowfall, and it's unlikely that any community would have been able to keep up with it. Nevertheless, some people believe that Medford could have done a better job of clearing the streets and sidewalks and of enforcing a regulation that property owners clear the sidewalks in front of their buildings. What steps will you take to improve the city's snow removal efforts?
Ms. Muccini-Burk, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. We were faced with some daunting weather last winter, and I applaud the men and women in the Department of Public Works that worked so very hard to try and do the best job that we could do for the citizens. I do think that people need to know that code enforcement will take place under my administration. We have ordinances on the books, we have laws on the books, they need to be enforced. And sometimes, you know, when it's your sidewalk and you don't want anyone to go give you a little code enforcement ticket, it's just unfortunate because the sidewalks need to be passable and we need to provide safe access for our children to get to school or to the bus stop. So I think that it's really important that it works hand in hand, that we augment our snow removal processes, that every part of our city is treated equally and fairly from a snow removal perspective, that big trucks, the biggest ones that can get out on your street are the ones that are made available for that. And then hand in hand with code enforcement, I think that we could see some positive impacts. Certainly we spent a lot of time after those storms analyzing what worked and what didn't work. And we all realized that that was just an unfortunate set of circumstances. And the city of Medford basically incurred about a $2 million deficit, and I believe Somerville may be in the 20 million range. So our streets did not look $18 million less worthy than Somerville. So we did a really good job, but we need to do better. There's always room to do better.
Thank you, Mr. Penta. 2 minutes.
One of the things that this last snowstorm did, it showed us how terrible our streets are, between the plowing, the potholes, and everything else that has been out there. And this is because of years and years and years of whatever. But the weather itself had a big factor into this. But one of the things I would do as the mayor of this community, I wouldn't, well, it's going to start in January, but I wouldn't do it in January. Unfortunately, whatever this year is going to be, it's going to be. But probably around May or June, I would sit down with my DPW department, and I would want to know and get a list of everybody who has a truck that's supposed to be plowing here in the city of Medford. I would want to know the streets that they're supposed to be plowing on. And I wouldn't want to go through what we go through every single year as a council. You get a phone call from somebody that says either the truck didn't show up, or the street, that the truck is too small for the street, and you can't push the plow, can't push the snow, and what have you. That's not right, because every citizen who's paying their taxes deserves to have their street plowed and plowed properly, not to be put into a corner, not to box in somebody's driveway or sidewalk. That's not right. So to do that, you need to have a working relationship, and I believe with all the new equipment that they have out there now, and their radios and their cell things, or whatever you want to call them, department heads will be able to know who's ever in charge of snow for the city, they would know where each and every truck is, and that way there if somebody gets a phone call. Also, at the same time, I would have what you call a citizen responder program, similar to a 311 program, where if a taxpayer were to call in, they would get a response back within a 24-hour working day period, whether it be for snow, whether it be for sidewalk, tree stump, whatever it might be. Because you know something? You shouldn't be put on hold, and I don't want to keep hearing the issue that I call city call the mayor's office, and I haven't heard anything. And especially if it's a non-election year, nobody returns their calls. So that's the sad part about it. So if you have a citizen responder program, at least you will know within 24 working hours what it's about, who you're supposed to call, and who's supposed to follow up on it, because that's what my administration is going to do. Thank you.
Ms. Burk, 1 minute follow-up.
Actually, just prior to my resigning from the city back on May 15th, a contract was signed with C-Click Fix, which is basically the backbone to a 311 program. We brought our department heads in, we interviewed the company, we saw how it was successful in Malden, Somerville, Boston, and it's a fabulous program, and that is something that the contract was signed, and it should be implemented ASAP. It shouldn't wait any longer. The people deserve that. And so I think that that's an important element of customer service from our community back to its citizens. But I think getting back, what we saw with the roads that were deteriorated beyond repair at this point from the snow, we're starting to see the projects being done, but there's so much more that needs to be done. We have to get back to the capital plan so that we have a roadmap of how we're going to do things in this community. And lastly, we will be hiring a new DPW commissioner. That will be the role of this next mayor, so it's urgent that we get the mayor that will look at the personnel policies to put the best person in those shoes. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 1 minute, back to you.
One of the things about the 311 program that my colleague is talking about, it's not something new. Council Longo Curran and Council Marks some years ago introduced this on the council. And this has been a struggle for the last 3 years, and it's finally getting implemented. And that's one of the things that bothers me on communication, or lack thereof, from the present administration to this city council. You know, if it's not your idea, it seems not to go anywhere. So unfortunately, I don't care whose idea it is, as long as it works to the benefit of this community. That's where we're going. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about equipment, or when we talk about our streets and how they're going to be taken care of, we need a report back from that. That's what a department head is going to have to do, because after and subsequent to the snowstorms and the streets being taken care of, I will expect a report back. As a matter of fact, I hope the question is asked pretty soon, but I will lead that into I hope somebody asks the question, because I have something I want to say as it relates to departments. Thank you.
Okay, now we are at our final question. I hope it's the one you want to hear, Mr. Penta.
It's the final question of the night.
This is it. But Dan, you're up.
Go ahead.
Actually, you have been moving through our questions with such efficiency that we have improvised a next to last question, and
Okay.
John will be asking the final question. So the next to the last question is this. This fall, a question will be on the ballot to see if Medford will adopt the Community Preservation Act, a surcharge on the property tax that would be matched by the state and can be used for certain purposes such as open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation. Do you support the CPA, and if it passes, what would you want to use the money for?
I believe this is going to go to Mr. Penta for 2 minutes.
I don't know if I misunderstood you. Did you say it would be matched by the city, or is it matched by the Commonwealth of Mass? There is a difference.
Matched by the Commonwealth.
Okay, you said city, I thought. Maybe I misheard it. The CPA is an initiative that took place by a group of citizens here in this community. The year was 2001. I was the only city council, and my colleagues served on the council that voted for that, so the question could go on the ballot back then. I believe it's something that the taxpayers of this community, they took the time to go out there to get the signatures. Having a complete understanding of what the Community Preservation Act is all about is something that's very important. Commonwealth of Massachusetts is supposed to be the matching grantee to this. Right now, this year, the Commonwealth is only allocating 18% of what they had originally set aside for this Community Preservation Act. The City of Medford, if in fact it passes, and I believe they're looking at a 1.5% surcharge over your tax rate, would generate approximately $1,200,000. But the most you'll be able to get back from the Commonwealth, if it stays true to form right now, would be 18%. It's a 5-year commitment that the City of Medford is obligated to pay, taxpayers have to pay. Your first $100,000 is exempt, so anything after the first $100,000 comes under the CPA. It could be used for whatever the necessary might be. Once the CPA is passed, I believe it's the City Council, the way it was explained to us, would appoint a committee. I think it's a committee of 5, 6, or 7. And that committee would designate where the money would go. It could change each year. It could go for the library, it could go for a park, it could go for a school, whatever it might be. As long as the taxpayers know, when they vote for this, either up or down, this November, that the CPA is a matching dollar amount from the Commonwealth, but if the Commonwealth doesn't match it or cannot match it, the City of Medford still will take that money out of your 1.5% override of your current tax base. So I think it's important that you know, understand it, and realize, that the City of Medford is going to be obligated for the next 5 years with this particular program. And I support it being on the ballot. Thank you.
2 minutes, Ms. Muccini-Burk.
Thank you very much. It's approximately, from the numbers that we've received, it's about a $56 per year add-on to your tax bill. And it goes into a trust fund that is protected. It's separate from any general fund or miscellaneous receipts. I did sign the ballot petition, and I will be voting for it on Election Day, because I think that it's a way for us to augment a lot of our cultural facilities, like the great building we're in tonight, the historic structures that we have in our community, parks and playgrounds, as well as affordable housing. So I think it's a means for us to be able to do some things that we simply can't afford in our budget process right now. And 10% of the pool has to be allocated to the 3 purposes. So it's a mandate that the monies have to be allocated in that fashion, and they could even be parlayed and saved. They could vote to put it into the next year so that you can continue to add into that fund, so then you can do a really substantial project. So it's a 5 to 9 member board. It's comprised of one from the Conservation Commission, one from Historical, one from Planning, a Park Board member, and a member of the Medford Housing Authority. That has to be part of your 5-member board, and you can make it as high as 9 by ordinance. And they make recommendations to the City Council, and it's the City Council's role to approve or decline, not to change, but to approve or decline. I think that it's a wonderful thing in our community. I applaud the people that have gotten the signatures for it, and it's up to the people. Ultimately, it's up to the people. But I would like to see some park accessibility projects go on. One of your questions was also what would we like to see happen with the money. I think that this facility could definitely use some of the money for air conditioning, so it's a year-round location and venue, and also the facade program be augmented here. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 1 minute.
One of the things, as my colleague has just said, would be the air conditioning for this particular spot right here. This is a great venue. Just look at the audience here tonight. There's almost, 800-900 folks here, of you folks here tonight. But you're coming out to hear and see something that's very important. Where your city's going to go in the next 2 years. How is it going to be directed? Is it she or I or whatever? But that's your choice, and you'll be able to have an opportunity to make that. But that's one of the reasons and one of the things that this particular money can do. The flip side to that is people might say it's another tax. And that's what has to be understood. It's a 5-year commitment. And if everybody's okay with it, I'm okay with it, because I will support that for which the people vote on. That's why you have ballot questions. This isn't anything personal right now, because once something goes on the ballot, this is a community involvement, and how the community dictates what they want is what we have to go by. And I would honor that and respect it, because you, the people, have made that decision. Thank you.
And 1 minute, Ms. Buccini-Burke.
The first $100,000 of value would be exempt from your property. Low, moderate, senior, there's an exemption as well for if you're over 60 and you meet that criteria. So hopefully it'll protect the most vulnerable in our community. I do think that it is $52, and on top of a pretty substantial tax bill, you know, some people will probably be grunting at it. But I do think that the purpose and what it can be used for outweighs that. So I do look forward to the election day. I'm just one vote out of however 12,000, 13,000 that come out that day. But I do think that it was a great task that these people were charged with, and they accomplished their goal. Thank you.
I believe now I can safely call for the last question.
Yes, finally, our final question. You have both identified a variety of needs that may require an increase in spending. How will you pay for these initiatives? Would you increase taxes, or would you cut the budget elsewhere? If the latter, what areas would you cut?
2 minutes to Ms. Buccini-Burke.
Thank you so much. I think that we have both talked about different programming that we'd like to see in our community. From the Community Development Office, I think that we need to look at the zoning ordinance change to the linkage ordinance, and I think that that can accomplish a lot without putting a burden on taxpayers. When you think about what the planning department does, it's to bring in the businesses. So if those businesses you bring in contribute to this linkage fund, then it should parlay, and it should be able to pay for all the services that were provided before the entity even came into our community. So I think that the main thrust that I've been looking at is the OCD office, really augmenting that. As far as the mayor's office, I think that we need a liaison to the people, to the council, an ombudsman for the people, and that can be created by massaging some of the positions that are already in the mayor's office. I think that there are tasks that could be worked into job descriptions, and I think that we would certainly be able to handle those 2 tasks. And one of them, I think it's vitally important that someone is at the meetings or watching the meetings and really gets the true picture of what issues are posed at the city council meetings. Because so often a paper comes up the next day or maybe 3 days later, and it really doesn't fill in all of the gray matter that happened during a city council meeting and what the real issues were from a citizen or the council alike. So I think it's really important that we have a dedicated person that is paying attention to those things, because we don't want an issue for a citizen to percolate. We want to nip it in the bud the next morning. So that would be the goal of having that liaison. And the ombudsman to the people should be the face of the city to be able to help you with your concerns. And if you need to be walked around the building to get things done, that would be the person that would be helping you out. And there's other opportunities that I think that we need to look at is streamlining permitting for our businesses. That has to be another big role. And I think interdepartmentals working together, it's very fragmented, and I think they all need to have weekly, monthly meetings and maybe bring developers in to address some of their concerns as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penta. 2 minutes.
Well, I'm glad that question was asked because now I can fill in what I was going to say. The one thing this Medford City Hall does not have is hasn't had department head meetings for a long period of time, an extendedly long period of time. Do you know how much information you can gather by having department head meetings and everybody coming in at a prescribed time, not coming and going as they pleasing, not coming at 8:45, 9 or 9:15, coming in at a prescribed time to sit there and talk about what your problems are? Because if somebody in the highway department has a problem, maybe somebody in the treasurer's office can see that problem in a different light and it can be resolved. And one of the reasons why some of these problems just linger out there, these department head meetings just don't take place. Why the present administration wasn't for it, I don't know. But I would be for it, and I would be for it big time. Because at a department meeting, you would find out what the wishes are of certain departments and how and what it's going to take to make them work. The city of Brookline is the best example of how it works. Not only do they have a budget book, but they have a budget book of ideas, a budget book of wish list, and it's all broken down in cost, what the cost would be. That's what we need to do. So to find out if you're going to add or subtract to a budget or raise taxes, that's not the issue right now. The issue is what needs to be done, what is it going to cost, where is the money going to come from if it's not in the budget, what ancillary areas can we look to get that money, and if we can't, then we will look at the next best issue. And maybe we put it on hold for 1 year or whatever it might be, or we take a priority of what's going to take place. You can't run this city. I will not run this city on a hope and a wish and a dream. I will run this city on what fiscally makes it work right and it's sound and what we can pay for, not to obligate ourselves into something because it sounds good, it looks good, and it feels good. That's not the way you run your house. That's not the way I run my house. Thank you.
And we have 1 minute follow-up here. Ms. Muchini-Burke.
I just wanted to add just a couple of small comments. Some of the projects that we're talking about are bonding projects, so they certainly would have to fall within the confines of the Prop 2.5 that we're limited by. So when we look at a budget, we have to look at the big picture of what we can afford and then put in the different departments. So there will be restructuring, there will be coordination between departments. I think a lot more has to happen between the different departments so that we all are on the same table. And there are department head meetings that currently take place, and building department probably does the best job of doing it. They bring in a lot of various departments in City Hall to meet with them on a regular basis to talk about projects. But now that you have those people in the room, you need to bring in the Bike Ped Committee. You need to bring the art community in so that they play a role in these meetings. So from the ground up, we're doing things right, and we're not revisiting them after they're built. So I think it's very important that we start that process to bring the department heads together in an open way, and maybe it's every Wednesday night they hold meetings that the public can come to talk to them. Thank you.
Mr. Penta, 1 minute.
Perfect example of a budget item that may not be ready to go. The police station. City of Malden has undertaken building a new police station. They have already secured $9 million in grants from the Commonwealth of Mass and other areas. We're looking at building a new police station. And by looking at building a new police station, my idea is to look at the entire footprint of not only what the police department is, the fire department, and all the businesses that surround it, leading up to the new Department of Public Works. I have an opportunity to present something, which I will in January, to all our department heads and to all the business folks and to the Medford City Council, and I will open it up to the public to make a presentation on how we can move everything around, secure the money, and at the same time not displace one business person. As a matter of fact, give them an opportunity for front door visibility in better spots than they are. That would be creative thinking as it relates to a building project, something that has never taken place with this Medford City Council in this city administration. Thank you.
Thank you. So that wraps up the questions for the evening. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to all of the residents that submitted, again, more than 200 that were able to boil down today. And now each candidate will have 2 minutes to give a closing argument on why they should be your next mayor of Medford. And we start with 2 minutes with Ms. Burk.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you all for participating this evening and the thoughtful questions that were asked. This is certainly an exciting time in our city. This level of civic engagement is unprecedented. And to me, tonight is one step in the interview process of becoming your chief executive officer. You will determine who is best suited to lead this city forward in a positive, innovative, and passionate manner. I've had the privilege to talk to many residents and business owners over the past months. I understand the frustration some feel from the parking program. Parking is an issue. I have listened, and I will attack it head-on by implementing several recommendations that I have offered and the business community has offered. But you are not electing a parking czar. You are electing the chief executive office of your city. We cannot be singularly focused. Medford is ready for its moment to ignite. To do so, we need to be cognizant of maintaining a great reputation as a welcoming community to all, demonstrating the pride of our unique neighborhoods, pursue revitalization of our squares, investigate means to traffic and pedestrian safety block by block, focus our energies on having a seat at the Green Line table to work toward visionary zoning along this corridor, continue our investment in our public schools to provide the very best education to all of our children, and get the positive word out that we are a great community to live, work, and play in. These issues and many more will be at the forefront of my administration. Medford clearly is at a crossroads, and residents have a choice as to the direction you would like to see your city go. If you want a CEO who is invested in this community, committed to fairness, embraces diversity, is honest, listens, and will be a champion for our city, then the choice is clear. Together, we will begin a new chapter, we will make change happen, and we will be partners in progress. I ask that you give me your vote of confidence on November 3rd by voting for Stephanie Burk. Thanks to all of you, my family and my friends who are here tonight for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Penta? Two minutes, sir.
I thank you for listening this evening, folks. For those of you who are still undecided, please allow yourselves to view my candidacy with an open mind. I received the best of all endorsements handed out during this campaign, and that is from you, the Medford citizens and taxpayers. I have dedicated my entire 39 years of work to government as an administrator, former union member, and elected official. I believe my education, professional and elected experiences, track record, and character give me the foundation necessary to move our city ahead. The Penta plan is a plan for the future of our children and grandchildren, our students, our small businesses, our environment, public safety, the arts, and our entire community that we all love. The Penta plan will promote that we can be proud of change that helps us accomplish our potential and change that sets an example for other communities to follow. I encourage everyone from all walks of life to be a part of making Medford a better place to live, because your government officials cannot do this alone. I am proud of the fact that I have run a positive, issues-oriented campaign since day one. This election should not be decided by anyone being pressured or told who to vote for, but rather on the common sense principle of which candidate has the most compelling vision and offers the best plan to move our city forward. Which candidate has the greatest passion and energy to successfully execute the plan, and which candidate is not committed or obligated to a single person, group, or organization. Bob Penta is that person. I will be a mayor for all residents, no matter what your age, race, or nationality, rich or poor, religious or sexual preference. We, the people of Medford, the real backbone of our city, should expect nothing less, and that is what I intend to give. Opportunity now presents itself for real leadership that finally works. Respectfully, I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Robert M. Penta, Medford's new mayor. Thank you.
Congratulations, November 4th, right home safely.
It's November 3rd. November 3rd. Hey, John, it's November 3rd.